There is a moment, a specific, brutal, unforgettable moment. You are sitting in a room, the phone is in your hand, you scroll through the contacts, you think about who you can call, who will show up, who actually believes in what you are building, and the answer hits you like cold water. Nobody. Not your closest friend. Not the people who say they love you. Not the family member who smiled at your face and nodded at your ideas. Nobody is coming. Nobody is going to invest in your vision. Nobody is going to drag you out of bed when your motivation runs dry. And if you fall, and at some point you will fall, nobody is going to catch you. For most people, that realization is the moment they collapse. They call it abandonment. They call it betrayal. And they spiral into depression and spend the next 3 years wondering why the universe dealt them such a cold hand. But there is a tiny fraction of human beings, rare, wired differently, psychologically distinct, who experience that exact same moment and feel something unexpected. Relief. Because for the first time in their lives, they understand that they are free. This video is for that person, and I believe that person is you. Otherwise, you would have already clicked away. What I'm about to walk you through is not motivation. Motivation is a borrowed emotion. It fades. What I'm giving you is architecture, a psychological framework rooted in centuries of strategic thought for how to build something real when you have nothing and no one behind you. Pay close attention. This will require you to be honest with yourself in ways most people never are. From the moment you entered a classroom, you were being conditioned in a way nobody ever told you about. Not through force, through culture, through language, through the structure of every institution that touched your life. School trained you to collaborate. Religion organized you into congregations. Corporations rewarded teamwork. Society chanted the phrase, "It is not what you know, it is who you know," until it became something you accepted without examination. And here is why that conditioning was so dangerous. It was not entirely wrong. It was just profoundly incomplete. Yes, relationships matter. Yes, community has value. But what that conditioning also produced, as a side effect no one warned you about, was a deep, structural belief that you are insufficient alone. That belief is the thing holding you back, not your lack of capital, not your lack of connections, not the economy, not your family background. The belief that you cannot move without someone moving with you. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentian political philosopher whose work still disturbs people 5 centuries later because it is still accurate, wrote in The Prince something that most people gloss over. He said a wise leader must rely only on what lies within his own control, and should never build his foundation on what lies in the hands of others. Think about what that actually means when you apply it to your life. Every time you wait for permission from someone else, you are building on their land. Every time your momentum depends on someone else's mood, their schedule, on their belief in you, you have handed over the keys to your own future. And here is the part that cuts deepest. When someone helps you, they own a piece of your success. When someone invests in you, they hold a claim on your direction. Support is not a gift. Support is a loan. And every loan comes with terms attached. A safety net sounds like protection, but a safety net is also a spider web. It catches you, yes, but it also keeps you exactly where you are, suspended in the mediocrity of whoever built it for you. The dependency program does not just limit your speed, it limits your ceiling, and the first step to breaking free from it is simply to see it clearly. If you are still here and something in that just landed, that tightening in your chest is not discomfort. That is recognition. See, the body understands the truth before the mind catches up. Stay with this. Let me introduce you to a concept I call the 0 point. The 0 point is when you strip away every external resource and look at what remains. No capital, no team, no influential contacts, no supportive environment. You look at the raw materials of your situation and you see only yourself staring back. For most people, the 0 point triggers panic. But here is what the panic is actually telling you. If you know how to read it, you are at maximum leverage. When you have nothing to lose and no one to answer to, you possess something that funded, connected, committee-driven people never have. Total decisional freedom. A startup with 10 investors has 10 sets of opinions embedded in every move it makes. A large organization with hundreds of employees has hundreds of points of friction slowing down every decision. They have board approvals, stakeholder reviews, consensus-building processes that can turn a 10-minute idea into a 3-month negotiation. You have none of that. You can pivot your entire direction in an afternoon. You can experiment without someone's feelings getting hurt. You can disappear for 2 months, rebuild and re-emerge, and you never had to explain yourself to a single person. This is a symmetrical warfare. A corporation with 1,000 employees is a slow, visible, heavy target. You are a ghost. You move in the shadows, you change shape, you strike and disappear. The lumbering army marching in formation is easy to read and easy to counter. The single figure moving through the dark is not. So zero support is not zero power. In a world of slow-moving institutions, your speed and agility are lethal advantages, but only if you stop mourning what you do not have and start studying what you do. Now, we need to do something that will feel uncomfortable. We need to diagnose the real reason you are still stuck, and it is not the absence of support, it is the craving for it. There is a psychological mechanism called intermittent reinforcement. It is the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. You get a reward occasionally, unpredictably, and that inconsistency actually intensifies your desire rather than satisfying it. Every time someone validated one of your ideas, a nod, that's actually not bad, a share on social media, your brain filed that away as a chemical it now needed. And every time the validation was withheld, the unanswered message, the uninterested look, the person who changed the subject when you started talking about your vision, your brain interpreted that as a problem to be solved. So you started adjusting yourself, softening your vision to make it more digestible, shortening your timelines to seem more realistic, dimming your ambition so it would not intimidate people who were not ready for it. You were not pursuing your vision anymore. You were auditioning it, constantly. For audiences who were never qualified to judge it, this is the validation addiction. And it is costing you years. Look at your last 3-cent messages honestly. Were you asking for permission or were you providing value? Were you seeking approval or were you moving something forward? If the answer is the former, onto that habit ends today. Here is the counterintuitive truth. The more visibly you seek support, the less credible you appear to the very people you are hoping to impress. Desperation signals uncertainty, and uncertainty is contagious. If you are not sure whether your path is worth taking, why should anyone else be? Machiavelli understood this. When you beg to be loved, you repel the very power you are trying to attract. Stop seeking approval for the vision, develop conviction in it. Do not explain it, execute it, and let the results speak in the language everyone understands. One of the most destructive things a person can do when building something is talk about it before it exists. There is actual science behind this. Research in goal psychology has shown that when you announce a goal to someone else, your brain registers a small hit of social reward that mimics the feeling of having already accomplished it. The result is that your drive to actually do the work quietly diminishes. You got the dopamine from the conversation. Your brain thinks progress happened. It did not. The answer is what I call the ghost protocol. Going ghost means entering a deliberate, strategic period of silence around your ambitions. Not because you are hiding, but because silence creates internal pressure. And that pressure is one of the most powerful performance fuels available to you. Think of it this way. A river that flows freely in every direction dissipates its energy across the landscape. It becomes shallow, slow, and forgettable. But a river forced through a narrow channel becomes something else entirely. It becomes a force that carves through rock. Your silence is the channel. The ghost protocol requires a vow of silence on your ambitions. You do not tell your parents, you do not tell your partner, you do not post big things coming on any platform, you do not hint, you do not tease. You let the ambition build up in your system like steam in a boiler until the only release valve available is the work itself. When you stop releasing your energy through conversation, through vague announcements, through performances for an audience that has not earned the preview, all of that energy has nowhere to go but into the work. You do not announce the next chapter. You write it. And when the results arrive, which they will if you stay in the work, the moment of reveal will be worth infinitely more than 1,000 premature announcements ever could have been. Silence is not weakness. In a world addicted to noise, silence is the most disciplined form of power. Here is where I am going to say something that most productivity content deliberately skips. Before you can fully step into the path of the self-reliant builder, you have to grieve. Not metaphorically. Genuinely. You had a version of your life in your mind. The version where the people closest to you showed up, where your family understood what you were building, where your friends grew alongside you instead of quietly resenting your growth, where someone looked you in the eye and said, "I see exactly what you are trying to do, and I believe in it completely." That version of your life is not coming. You need to hold a quiet funeral for it. This is not pessimism. This is one of the most psychologically necessary acts a person can perform on the path to becoming capable. Because as long as you are still grieving that imagined life in silence, as long as part of your energy is still being spent hoping that those people will eventually come around, you are operating at partial capacity. You are trying to run a race with one shoe on. The grief, when you let yourself feel it fully instead of burying it under hustle, does something important. It closes the loop. It says, that chapter is finished. I am no longer waiting for it. And from that closed loop, something new becomes possible. Not bitterness, not resentment. Something quieter and more powerful than both of those. Clarity. The kind of clarity that only comes when you stop looking backward for something that was never going to arrive. Or if this section hit differently, if there is something you have been carrying about someone who did not show up for you, recognize that the weight of that is not making you stronger. It is making you slower. Acknowledge it. Hold the funeral. Then close the door. Once the grief is done, once the funeral has been held for the life you thought you were owed, something new needs to be constructed in its place. I call this self-architecture, the deliberate, conscious act of becoming the internal support system you were waiting for externally. Psychologists have a term for part of this. They call it reparenting. The idea that you can, as an adult, provide yourself the psychological scaffolding that your early environment failed to give you. But I want to go further than that framework. Self-architecture is not just healing, it is building. So it means that when you wake up in the morning and there is no one texting you encouragement, you become the voice that says, "Get up, there is work to do." Not gently, firmly. Like someone who actually believes in you and refuses to let you waste yourself. It means you become a fascist dictator to yourself. Not to the world, to yourself. You need a protocol, not a to-do list. A to-do list is a wish. A protocol is a law. When you hit a setback and there is no mentor to call, you sit in the discomfort long enough to extract the lesson yourself, which embeds that lesson far more permanently than being handed the answer ever would. When you look at your finances, your health, your discipline, your emotional state, you do not look around for someone to fix those things. You assess, you strategize, you act, and you develop what feels like a split personality. There is the version of you that is tired, emotional, and wants to be understood. And there is the commander. The commander does not negotiate with the weakness. The commander drags it forward through the mud until it either strengthens or goes quiet. Every role you expected someone else to play, the investor, the coach, the accountability partner, the cheerleader, you build the internal version of that. All of it. This is not loneliness rebranded. This is a genuine upgrade in psychological architecture. Machiavelli understood this when he described the qualities of the effective prince. Not someone waiting for fortune to favor him, but someone who had developed within himself the full capacity to adapt, respond, and prevail under any conditions. Fortune favors the prepared. And preparation is an inside job. The morning negotiation is where it starts. The moment your eyes open, you are already in a negotiation between who you want to become and who you currently are. That negotiation is won or lost in the first 3 minutes. Get up before the comfort voice wins the argument, every single day. Because every day you lose that negotiation, you signal to your own subconscious that you are not in charge. Then the deep work, not long hours, deep hours. The myth of the 16-hour workday is a performance, not a strategy. 4 hours of genuine, undistracted, uninterrupted cognitive engagement will outperform a 12-hour day filled with noise and interruptions. No meetings, no politics, no one pulling your attention sideways. Pure output. This is your asymmetrical advantage. Then your information diet. On your mind is your only asset right now, and what you feed it determines what it produces. Stop consuming content that makes you feel small. Stop filling your mental diet with outrage and distraction. Read the people who built the things you want to build. Study the strategies of those who navigated conditions similar to yours. Machiavelli studied the Romans, not because Rome was trendy, but because Rome was instructive. Then the evening audit. At the end of every day, you are your own performance reviewer. Ask yourself the honest question: did I actually move something forward today, or did I create the feeling of productivity without the substance of it? Busyness and progress are not the same thing. Learn the difference and hold yourself to it. This structure creates a container for your chaos. As it replaces the external scaffolding of a job or an institution with an internal structure of iron. No one is giving you a performance review. You are the boss. Be a harsh one. Carl Jung spent decades developing a theory about the parts of ourselves we suppress, the impulses, the drives, the dark emotions we are taught to be ashamed of. He called it the shadow. His argument was not that the shadow should be indulged. His argument was that the shadow, when repressed, does not disappear. It leaks, it sabotages. It turns inward as depression or outward as misdirected aggression in ways we never consciously chose. But when the shadow is integrated, acknowledged, understood, directed, it becomes one of the most potent sources of energy a person can access. What does that mean for you practically? The anger you feel when someone dismisses your work is not something to suppress. Redirect it into a level of craft that makes dismissal impossible next time. The envy you feel when someone less disciplined than you gets results faster is not a character flaw. It is data. It is your psyche telling you exactly what you want and exactly how intensely you want it. Channel it. The pride that says, "I deserve more than this," is not arrogance. It is the engine that has to be running if you are ever going to move against the gravity of your current circumstances. Stop feeling guilty about your ambition. Stop apologizing for wanting to win. Stop performing humility about desires you have every right to pursue. Machiavelli called this virtue. Not moral virtue, capability, prowess. See the willingness to impose your will on circumstances rather than simply accepting them. Virtue is not pretty, it is not polished. It is not the version of ambition that photographs well. It is the thing that keeps you at your desk when no one is watching and nothing is guaranteed. Take the rejection, the unanswered messages, the people who laughed at the idea, the ones who excluded you, and place all of it in a mental furnace. Let it burn. Anger is cleaner fuel than sadness. Sadness makes you heavy. Anger makes you move. Spite is loyal when inspiration has left the building. Use it until you do not need it anymore. You can switch fuels once you are in orbit. But to escape gravity, you need fire. Here is a piece of advice recycled endlessly in entrepreneurial culture that is responsible for enormous amounts of wasted time. Go network. As attend events, hand out cards, build your relationships, put yourself out there. Here is the reality. Networking is a strategy for people who already have leverage. When you walk into a room of powerful, resourceful people with nothing built yet, you are not networking. You are a beggar auditioning for scraps of attention from people who have no particular reason to give it to you. And powerful people recognize a beggar immediately. Machiavelli advised the prince to make himself necessary. Not likable, not present, necessary. The difference between those two things is everything. Likeable is when people enjoy your company. Necessary is when they cannot afford to be without what you provide. One is a social achievement. The other is a strategic one. You become necessary through the quality and rarity of what you build, not the number of rooms you enter. The best introduction in any professional context is not a handshake at a mixer. It is a track record that precedes you. It is work that speaks before your mouth opens. It is a reputation that makes the person across the table already interested before the conversation begins. Build the skill set so specifically and so deeply that the market comes looking for you. Build the portfolio that renders the business card irrelevant. Build the body of work that becomes its own marketing. Every hour spent at a networking event is an hour stolen from your craft. And right now, your craft is the only currency that actually compounds. Build the honeypot. Stop chasing the bees. Succeed first, network later. And when you do finally enter those rooms, you will not be handing out cards. People will be asking for yours. There is a question I want you to sit with before we go further. What emotion have you been suppressing because someone told you it was not acceptable? What drive, what hunger, what dark fuel have you been pushing down because the world around you called it ugly? That thing has been waiting. It has been waiting to be redirected into something that changes your life. Identify it. Name it. Put it to work. I want to prepare you for something. Because if you execute what this video is describing, if you commit to the silence, the grief, the self-architecture, the protocol, the deep work, something will happen that nobody warns you about. You will win. Not overnight, not without setbacks. But you will win. The numbers will shift. The quality of your output will become undeniable. The results will arrive in ways that are visible to people who spent years choosing not to look. And then the vultures will return. The friend who was always too busy. The family member who weaponized the phrase realistic expectations. The person who performed skepticism so thoroughly and consistently that you started to absorb it. They will come back, smiling, warm, reaching for you, and they will use a word that will make something very quiet happen inside you. I always knew we were going to make it. Look at us. They will try to insert themselves into a story they were never in. They will want to stand adjacent to the trophy they never helped lift. And the part of you that spent years wanting their approval, that part will feel a pull toward letting them rewrite the history. This is your final Machiavellian test. And it is more subtle and more dangerous than all the earlier ones. Because the answer is not rage, it is not confrontation. It is not a speech about everything they failed to do. The answer is measured, gracious, absolute distance. You do not owe anyone bitterness. But you also do not owe anyone revisionism. You know who was in the room when it was empty. You know who the silence belonged to. That knowledge does not need to be performed publicly. It just needs to quietly inform every decision you make about who gets proximity to what you have built. You do not need to be cruel. You do not need to cause a scene. You simply maintain the distance. You treat them with the same polite indifference they extended to you when it cost them nothing. You become a wall of glass. They can see you. They cannot touch what you built. The only people allowed inside the castle are the ones who helped carry the stones. And since you carried them alone, the castle belongs to you alone. This is not coldness. This is sovereignty. You clapped for yourself when the room was silent. That is the only applause that actually counts. There is a beautiful paradox waiting at the end of this path. The person who succeeds without support eventually becomes the rarest thing in the world, someone genuinely worth being supported by. Not because they need it anymore, but because they have earned the discernment to deploy it well. When you have navigated the 0 point, when you have built through silence and grief and self-architecture and iron discipline, you develop an eye for potential that comfortable, well-supported people simply cannot see. Because you have been that person sitting in the empty room, wondering if the work will ever mean anything. And from that place, you can become the presence you never had. Not indiscriminately, strategically. You look for the spark, not the loudest voice in the room, not the most polished presentation, but the person whose eyes carry the specific weight of someone who is building something in the dark with no one watching. You invest there. You become the architect who builds other architects. But you never forget where your foundation was laid. You keep a corner of that silence in you, not as a wound, as an anchor, as the thing that keeps you honest when the applause gets loud and the room fills up and it becomes tempting to believe that the version of you that exists in other people's attention is the real one. The real one is the version who kept working when no one was watching. That person built everything. That person is the actual asset. Hold on to that person. Protect them. because they are the only version of you that fortune cannot take away. I know what part of your brain is doing right now. It is looking for the exit. It is generating objections. This is extreme. Humans need connection. This cannot apply to my situation. That voice is not entirely wrong. Humans do need connection. Community does have value. None of what I have said argues otherwise. What it argues against is something very specific, the version of neediness that outsources your belief in your own vision to people who were never equipped to carry it. You can have relationships, you can love people, you can collaborate, celebrate, and belong to something. And still, at the center of all of it, you must be the one person you can absolutely and unconditionally count on. That is the Machiavellian rule of power that nobody frames this way. Not domination over others, dominion over yourself. The people who watched you hesitate, who watched you shrink, who watched you wait for a permission that was never going to arrive, they did not take anything from you. They revealed something. They revealed that you were still waiting for external authorization to do the thing you already knew you needed to do. Consider this the last time you wait for that permission. The empty chair next to you is not a vacancy. It is a throne, and you have been big enough to fill it for longer than you have been willing to admit. As in, if this opens something in you, if something here named a feeling you have been carrying but could not articulate, subscribe. Share it with one person who is building alone right now and needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper into the psychological frameworks behind self-reliance, strategic thinking, and building without permission, you know where to find the next level of this conversation.